colonisation of the Australian mainland by a European power was next to inevitable. The British colonisation of Australia had many flaws, yet there is much in the assertion that the best thing that ever happened to Australia was to have been settled by the British. We owe a lot to our British origins, the commonality of institutions, language, legal systems, press freedoms, sporting passions, in some respects our sense of humour, and so the list goes on. Yet we drew the line very early. Australians rejected class distinctions or any semblance of an aristocracy. These things were judged to be out of step with the distinctive society we had begun to build. Respect was never to morph into deference. Australia had chosen the good bits of our British inheritance, but rejected the bad bits and the bits that were simply not fit for purpose. This was an early illustration of what would grow to be one of the defining characteristics of our nation, and that was a sense of balance. I have chosen this phrase as the title of this volume because it deals with topics in our current national discourse in which that sense of balance shines through. The Hawke government was in power when the bicentennial celebrations finally took place, and in an early act of cancel culture, an unknown expression in the 1980s, it discarded the Australian achievement in favour of the empty and limp tag of living together. Not entirely clear about what the bicentenary should be celebrating, the government replaced positive affirmation of what Australia had achieved in 200 years with a meaningless banality. The major formal event of the 200th anniversary party was at Sydney Cove on the 26th of January, addressed by the Prime Minister and Prince Charles. Right on song, it was interrupted by the arrival of the First Fleet reenactment, which by then had become a private enterprise venture. The government could no longer handle the sponsorship of what had begun as an official reenactment of Phillip's epic First Fleet voyage that inaugurated modern Australia. Some Aboriginal people objected to the bicentennial commemoration, consistent with their argument that Australia had been invaded. Wishing to accommodate Aboriginal opinion and goaded by leftist apologists who seemed ashamed of what Australia had become, the government separated itself from the reenactment, secure in the knowledge that plenty of Australians, proud of what we had achieved, would pitch in to ensure that the expedition would not fail. But in a final act of hypocrisy, the official program for the day was arranged so that there was a gap to accommodate the arrival of the First Fleet reenactment, neither out of sight nor out of mind, but certainly out of official acknowledgement. Little was made of this at the time. Australians knew there was plenty about their country to celebrate. Debate about the 26th of January as Australia Day continues. In this context, it is worth noting that in its historic Mabo judgment 4 years later, widely hailed as a landmark in achieving proper recognition of the first Australians, the High Court of Australia did not question that Australia had been settled, as distinct from being either conquered or ceded. Mr Justice Toohey stated, inter alia, and I quote his words, "There is no question of annexation of the Murray Islands by conquest or cession, so it must be taken that they were acquired by settlement, even though long before European contact they were occupied and cultivated by the Meriam people." Much of the basis of the court's conclusion that native titles survived on the Murray Islands was that Australia had not been conquered but settled.